Okay, welcome everyone. This is Brother Doug filling in for Brother Bobby and Kristen at the Awakened by Yahuwah Fellowship Group. We are going into Isaiah chapter 25. I will be, just to mix it up a little bit, I will be reading from the Hallelujah Scriptures. So everyone here, we read from different translations, just to kind of test them against one another and to make it a little interesting. So I will be starting chapter 25, and here we go. So let me just mute everyone, and I'll give everyone time to get there. Okay. All right, here we go. Isaiah Yashayahu chapter 25. O Yahuwah, you are my Elohim. I exalt you. I praise your name, for you shall do a wonder. Counsels of long ago, trustworthiness, truth. For you shall make a city a heap, a walled city a ruined, a palace of foreigners to be a city no more, never to be rebuilt. Therefore a strong people praise you. The city of the powerful nations revere you. For you shall be a refuge to the poor, a refuge to the needy, in his distress a shelter from the storm, a shade from heat. For the spirit of the ruthless is like a storm against a wall. You subdue the noise of foreigners as heat in a dry place, as heat in the shadow of a cloud. The singing of the ruthless is subdued. And in this mountain, Yahuwah of hosts shall make for all people a feast of choice pieces, a feast of old wines, of choice pieces with marrow of old wines, well refined. And he shall swallow up on this mountain the surface of the covering which covers all people, and the veil which spread over all nations. He shall swallow up death forever, and the Master Yahuwah shall wipe away tears from all faces, and take away the reproach of his people from all the earth. For Yahuwah has spoken, and it shall be said in that day, see, this is our Elohim, we have waited for him, and he saves us. This is Yahuwah, we have waited for him. Let us be glad and rejoice in his salvation. For the hand of Yahuwah rests on this mountain, and Moab is trodden down under him, as straw is trodden down in the water of a dunghill. And he shall spread out his hands in their midst as he who spreads out his hands to swim, and he shall bring down their pride together with the skill of his hands. And the high stronghold of your walls he shall bring down, lay it low, leveled to the ground, down to the dust. And that is the end of Yashayahu chapter 25. And let me unmute everyone so they can chime in. Let's see here. You guys should be able to unmute yourselves, I'm hoping. All right. So that was a pretty interesting chapter.
Yeah, kind of short.
Pretty much what I got was a direct correlation to Revelations 21, I believe, where it says, he shall wipe all their tears away. There will be no more death, no more sorrow. And so I found that pretty interesting. The feast might be referring to the wedding feast. I'm just thinking brainstorming pretty much of what that feast he might be talking about.
What verse?
let's see, it says, in this chapter, it says, and in this mountain, verse 6, Yahuwah of hosts shall make for all people a feast of choice pieces, a feast of old wines, of choice feasts with marrow of old wines, well refined. So maybe that's the wedding feast that he's foreshadowing. Because it seems like this whole chapter is talking about the end, like pretty much, after Armageddon. Yeah. And verse 8, it talks about he shall swallow up death. So a partial fulfillment would be Yahusha swallowing up death, I guess. That's like, like the first fulfillment. Oh, I see Laura raised a hand, so let me unmute her. I'm trying to unmute her, but it's not doing anything. It's a little weird.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Verse 12. Like the walls of Jericho, which possibly resembled like the last trump being blown. Those are food for thought there.
Yeah, I never got that connection with Numbers 12. I never I don't know, I guess I haven't read that in a while, because I don't know, I never got a connection with the wall of Jericho falling after the trumpet was blown. That's interesting. And another thing too is Moab. Talks about Moab being destroyed towards the end. So I notice there's a lot of Yahuwah is pronouncing judgment on Moab a lot in the book of Isaiah. I don't know if that's symbolic for another nation end times, or if it's the Moabites in general. But it seems like in the past 2 or 3 chapters we've read recently, he's pronouncing judgment on them.
That's a correlation to Isaiah 11:14, and it says, "They shall fall down upon the shoulder of the Philistines towards the west. Together the people of the east, their hand stretching forth on Edom, Moab, and children of Ammon shall be subject to them."
And what was
Isaiah 15:1-16, and I think Numbers 24 verse 17, and Zephaniah 2 verse 9. Those are the ones I got from Moab.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, that's something I'm gonna have to do. I'm gonna have to keep my sword open or something, because there's no cross references in my Hallelujah scriptures, so I'm gonna have to do something. I have to do some type of paralleling here, because see here.
I got these off of eSword.
So let's see here. So I want to see what this gives me, because that's what I like about the MySword is you can actually put general cross-referencing on there, so it doesn't matter what translation you use, it will give you like cross-references. So I'm just looking through real quick on the MySword with the LXXE. Gives me Yashayahu 21:9, 23 verse 13. So that's interesting as giving those cross references, because those ones are talking about Babylon, and this chapter is talking about Moabites. So I found that pretty interesting, the cross references that my sword's given me. like 23:13 says, and if you depart to the land of the Chaldeans, this also is laid waste by the Assyrians, for her wall is fallen. So Isaiah 21:9 says, and behold, he comes riding in a chariot and pair, and he answered and said, Babylon is fallen, and all her images and all her idols have been crushed to the ground. And then gives me Revelations 14 verse 8, which I have to go to a New Testament one since the Septuagint is only Tanakh. Let's see, Revelations 14:8. And there followed another angel saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all the nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. Chapter 18, verse 2, it also gave me. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and has become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and the cage of every unclean and hateful bird. So that's interesting. It gives me those cross-references for verse 2 of the chapter we just read. A little weird. I guess because it's saying that this city won't be built. So I guess in context, I guess it is talking about Babylon. It's just weird because we read, I think it's verse 10 or 11 talks about Moab. So that's weird. I don't know. I guess there's a connection between Moab and Babylon. I don't know. A little weird. That's just something that kind of pointed out to me that I was kind of interested about where the correlation is. That's very
Moab is to help the woman by it says, I can't remember where it is, but the scripture that says, hide my people, my castaways. And I think this is perhaps referring to the woman who is protected in the wilderness for 3.5 years. So if Moab is doing his job the way God asked him to, he wouldn't be trodden under, which maybe he doesn't do what Yahweh asked him to do.
Yeah.
Well, I got another interesting cross-reference from my MySword here on my Android. It says for verse 6 of this chapter, it gives me Luke 14:16. Maybe this gives more insight of what the supper is. Then he said unto him, a certain man made a great supper and bade many. So let's go to Luke 14:16. I'm just curious if this is talking about the wedding feast. Let's see. Let me go back. So hold on. That was verse 6 of 25 Isaiah, and it's giving me Luke 14:16. So let me see here. Luke 14:16. Then he said to him, a certain man made a great supper and bade many, and sent his servant at supper time to say to them that were bidden, come, for all things are now ready. And they all with one consent began to make excuse. The first said unto him, I have bought a piece of ground, I must need to go and see it. I pray thee, have me excused. And another said, I have bought 5 yoke of oxen, and I go to prove them. I pray thee, have me excused. And another said, I have married a wife, and therefore I cannot come. So that servant came and showed his master these things. Then the master of the house, being angry, said to his servant, go out quickly into the streets and the lanes of the city, and bring in here the poor and the maimed and the halt and the blind. And the servant said, Master, it is done as you have commanded, and yet there is room. And the master said unto the servant, go out into the highways and the hedges, and compel them to come in, that my house may be filled. For I say unto you that none of those men which were bidden shall taste of my supper. And there went great multitudes with him, and he turned and said unto them, If any man come to me and hate not his father, mother, and wife, and children, and brother, and sisters, yea, and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. And whosoever does not bear his stake and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which of you intending to build a tower sits not down first and counts the cost, whether he has sufficient to finish it? Lest haply after he had laid the foundation and is not able to finish it, all that behold it begin to mock him, saying, This man began to build and was not able to finish. Or what king going to make war against another king sits not down first and consults whether he be able with 10,000 to meet him that comes against him with 20,000, or else, while the other is yet a great way off, he sends an ambassador, desires conditions of peace. So likewise, whosoever he be of you that forsakes not all that he has, he cannot be my disciple. Salt is good, but if the salt has lost his flavor, where shall it be seasoned? It is neither fit for the land nor ye for the dunghill, but men cast it out. He that has ears to hear, let him hear. So I found that interesting. Seems like that the feast that Yahuwah is preparing for all these people in Isaiah 25 could be the wedding feast that Yahushua talks about in Luke 14. Because it seems like Yahushua's hinting that this is the wedding feast. He's pretty much talking about the supper he has prepared. And I believe there's a verse in Revelations that says, Blessed are those who are invited to the wedding supper of the Lamb. Let's see. I think she muted herself. There you go.
I was just thinking of the mountain Yahuwah of hosts shall make for all people a feast of choice pieces. He's not referring to, I don't think he's referring to the 144,000, because he says it's for all people a feast of choice pieces. So I'm not sure.
And the references you just read in Luke is something to really salah about, really ponder, because if you're called and you think you're going to this feast, don't hesitate, because he'll just call somebody else. Because we cannot put anything before Yahweh.
I find it interesting too. I see the metaphor of that parable. The servants, the ones that knew him, or the ones that were his servants that were originally invited, could possibly be the natural-born Israelites that had their hearts hardened. Because he originally invites them, and then they choose not to go. They make excuses out of their excuse. Oh, I'm not coming. And then he gets angry and he says, okay, well, find these people on the street, find these people that are technically strangers, and, invite them. So it's kind of like the grafting in aspect almost. It's like, okay, well, these people have rejected me, or didn't have faith in me. So now I'm gonna reach out to the ones on the street. And he talks about the poor. He talks about the lame, and I think one of the other people, he says, go find. Let's see here. See if I can find the exact verse. And he says in verse 23 of chapter 14 of Luke says, And the master said unto the servant, Go out into the highways and hedges, and compel them to come in, that my house may be filled. And then verse 24 tells you the original people, he's saying, won't taste of his supper, which is kind of weird. It says, "For I say unto you that none of those men which were bidden shall taste of my supper." So it's kind of weird. It's kind of like they've rejected him, and now he's finding, other people that don't know him to be invited to his supper. So I don't know. I kind of saw like the natural olive tree and the grafted olive tree concept there, and the strangers or the Gentiles being grafted in as being the strangers that he invites off the street, off the highways.
It's also, that's the part that's frightening if you are called, because I think a person has to be called to be invited to this feast if it is the wedding feast. You can't be somebody in Judaism. I just don't see that at all. I think that these people are called and they make excuses why they can't do what's required to be at that wedding feast.
Look at the one that was uninvited.
And it's frightening. It's a verse to me that says we better be on our toes.
Yeah, I personally don't believe especially anyone that rejects Yahusha. I think to me, that's a guarantee that you're not in the kingdom. I mean, there's so many verses in the New Testament that talk about, you can't have the Father without the Son. So, I mean, that's just a reality. It's a harsh reality, but it's a reality. You got so many religions that deny the Son. So many religions that, believe in a creator, but they don't prescribe to, who the creator is, and they also denounce the Son. So I think that's pretty much the wide gate is believing, generally believing that a creator exists, but not acknowledging who that creator is and who his Son is. So I think that's kind of like a given. I forget where it is, if it's in Acts or Matthew, where it says, he who has rejected Yahusha is already condemned himself. So it's like, the choice is yours. It's like you and the thing is too, I don't know, the whole wedding feast thing, I think it's for the whole body of Messiah, not just the bride.
I don't think it's talking about the wedding feast here. I have some cross references for Isaiah 25, verse 2, where it says, "For you shall make a city a heap, a walled city a ruin, a place of foreigners, to be a city no more, never to be rebuilt." And my cross references are Isaiah 11, verse 4. "But with the righteousness," hold on. Did I click on that one? Not the wrong one. Hold on. The computer is freezing up for some weird reason now. Oh, okay, I just had it. Here we go. Isaiah 25, verse 12. "In the high stronghold of your walls he shall bring down, lay it low, level to the ground, down to the dust." Isaiah 14:23, "And I shall make it a possession for the porcupine and marshes of muddy water, and shall sweep it with the broom of destruction, declares Yahuwah of hosts." Isaiah 17, verse 1, "The message concerning Damascus, see, Damascus ceases to be a city and shall become a heap of ruin." Isaiah 21, verse 9, "And see, this a chariot of men coming up with a pair of horsemen, and he spoke up and said, Babel is fallen, and all the carved images of her mighty ones he has broken to the ground. Isaiah 23, verse 13. See, the land of Kasdim, this people did not exist. Asher found it for wild beasts of desert. They set up their siege towers. They demolished her palaces and made her a ruin. Deuteronomy 13, verse 16. And gather all its plunder into the middle of the street, and completely burn with fire the city and all its plunder before Yahuwah your Elohim, and it shall be a heap forever, never to be built again. Jeremiah 51:26. And they shall not take from you a stone for a corner, nor a stone for a foundation, but you shall be a waste forever, it declares Yahuwah. And my last one is interesting. Nahum 3:12 through 15. All your strongholds are fig trees with ripened figs. When shaken, they shall fall into the mouth of the eater. See, your people in the midst are women. The gates of your land shall be open wide to your enemies. Fire shall consume your gate. Bars, draw for yourself water for the siege. Strengthen your defenses. Go into clay and tread the mortar. Lay hold of the brick mold. There a fire shall consume you. A sword cut you off. Eat you up like a locust. Make yourself like locusts. Make yourself many like the swarming locusts. I think this is talking about Moab. And
Like the wrath of Yahuwah to me.
yeah.
While you were reading that, I just got an idea. Maybe it's that other feast he talks about in prophecy where he says it'll be that great feast of the kings of the earth being fed into the fowls and the beasts. That's possible because that's end times too. I think in Ezekiel talks about that. Talks about I've prepared a great feast, and he talks about the kings of the earth being killed and a great slain. And I forget what exact chapter or verse it is, but maybe that's the feast he's talking about here.
That's in Revelation. Let's see. Talks about feeding the wicked into the wine presses. And the wine press was trodden outside the city, and blood came out of the wine press up to the bridles of the horses were about 1,600 stadion. And this is in Revelation 14 that I'm reading, and where it talks about the messenger thrust his sickle into the earth and gathered the vine of the earth and threw it into the great wine press of the wrath of Yahuwah. And that's when the next verse comes up. The wine press was trodden and blood comes out. So this would definitely be the wrath of Yahuwah.
Yeah, this is also referring to Revelation 18:2 through 9 and Revelation 18 verse 19. Revelation 18:2 through 9, 2 to 3 says, and he cried with a mighty voice saying, Babel the great is fallen, and has become a dwelling place of demons, a haunt for her every unclean spirit, a haunt for every unclean and hatred bird, because all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her whoring, and the sovereigns of the earth have committed whoring with her, and the merchants of the earth have become rich through the power of her riotous living. And Revelation 18 verse 19 says, And they threw dust on their heads and cried out, weeping and mourning, and saying, Woe, woe, the great city in which all who had ships on the sea become rich by her wealth. For in 1 hour she was laid waste. Had ships on the sea. Could that be America? That's interesting.
Yeah, I think it's there's definitely a connection. I remember a couple chapters ago in our last study last Shabbat, we went into a chapter where Yahuwah prophetically talks about Tyre and Tarshish, the ships of Tarshish, and there's a lot of cross references in that chapter to Babylon. So, yeah, I would think the merchants could refer in that time period to Tyre. And but in end times prophecy, yeah, I would think U.S. because of the a lot of ships going to our ports. Like the merchants of the earth would be anyone that does business with this country, and the reason I would say this more reflects America than Rome prophetically is because Rome doesn't have many ships going to their ports. They don't have many merchants coming to them. And even though the Vatican, I believe, is the mother, she's the harlot. But I would say in this context, the verses you just read talking about the merchants of the earth, it would make more sense that it's talking about America and all these merchants from other countries, like all the kings of the earth having their merchants by ship coming to our ports, and New York City and all that, and just the fact that New York has like so much stock exchanges and all of that. It seems like there's a lot of connections with that, with America. I think personally, in my opinion, America is the daughter of Babylon. Like where you see in Jeremiah 51, it talks about the daughter of Babylon and how she's just like her mother. Because pretty much America, a lot of the stuff that America was created from really was just a carbon copy of Rome. It was pretty much, that's the reason we have sports. A lot of the stuff was just basically copied from Rome, and pretty much everything, our calendar, everything came from Rome. Rome gave birth to basically us and Great Britain in a way, because Great Britain was controlled by the Vatican at a certain point, and pretty much a lot of their culture came from Rome. So I don't know. That's how I look at that etymologically, if that's the right word for it. I believe that the Vatican obviously is the mother whore, the mother harlot. Catholicism, the Vatican, and the beast she rides could be the United Nations most likely. That's the way I look at it, and America definitely has their role in prophecy. I believe America is gonna most likely be unioned up with the Vatican and be used to try to get a one world government. They're going to be very pivotal in that role.
Well, there are definitely many daughters that come out of the whore, and I think it's more referring to churches, circuses, because they've all adopted the Sunday that the Catholics have claimed as theirs. Yeah. And that's who I think the daughters of Babylon are, more than the countries. Now, America's one of the countries that definitely is feeding on the riches, the richness of the whore. And that's where I see the government of this country, the people of this country are a different story, I think. I think American people are just lost Israelites for the most part. And there a lot of them are waking up now, thank Yahweh. They're starting to wake up.
Hallelujah. Yeah, most people don't know what the history of this country is, don't know what this country was founded on, and that's part of the problem. They, and when I swear, when I read in Daniel, this beast looked like a lamb, but spoke as a dragon, I was like, I know what country that is. Because we're taught in the church, oh, this was a Christian nation. It was built on the beliefs of the Bible.
No. Built on Freemasons.
So that when I read that, I forget what chapter it is from Daniel. It might be 10 or 11. I know it talks about like one of the beasts that I think it's the beast that the little horn comes out of, that looks like a man, speaks like a man, and in that same chapter it talks about that it looks like a lamb and spoke as a dragon. So it has so-called biblical appearance, or puts on a biblical scriptural appearance, but actually speaks as a dragon, which Satan is actually depicted as a dragon in Revelations 12. So basically what it's telling you is this beast, this nation, appears to be pure, but really, speaks like the serpent. So to me, I was like, wow, that spoke volumes to me prophetically. I was like, wow, I don't know, that's why I believe what I believe about, where this country's role in prophecy. It has nothing to do with the people. There's a lot of great people in this country. It has nothing to do with the people. It just has to do with where prophetically this nation spiritually is, in line with, the Vatican. Like, I agree with Shoshana. The mother whore has a lot of daughters. And the only problem with the Protestant Reformation is they didn't go all the way back. That was the only problem. They even wanted to stick with the New Testament only. Like, if you do some research, like a lot of the guys, like Tyndale and all of them, they originally only had New Testament Bibles. They were so much indoctrinated from the Catholic Church that they had to little by little start returning back to the ancient past. And Tyndale was one of the closest, because he didn't like the word source. He wouldn't use it in his translation for congregation. Almost every time you can test it against a Geneva, a KJV. The Tyndale's like the only one from the 1500s that actually uses congregation for assembly.
I found your verse. I saw another beast coming up out of the earth. It had two horns like a lamb and spoke like a dragon. This is Revelation 13, verse 11. And he exercised the authority of the first beast in his presence, and causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. This sounds like the Pope to me. That's who it sounds like.
Yeah, what spoke volumes was it causes the world to worship the first beast. So the way I look at it, as America is causing the whole world to adore Rome, adore the Vatican, to adore the mother whore. And that's pretty much what you see even now. You see Obama when he was in power. Oh, me and Mr. Pope Francis, we're best friends. I endorse the Pope. And it's continuing with Donald Trump. Donald Trump, is trying to act like this good guy against the system, and then he meets up with Pope Francis and they're buddies.
It only goes to prove they're not elected, they're selected.
Mm-hmm.
Very much.
But yeah, to me, this is just what I get out of it, that it's not a country, it's actually the Pope who appears like a lamb but speaks like a dragon. And remember, the first beast is Nimrod,
Which is coming back.
which is who is returning very soon. In fact, he may already be resurrected, and they're just waiting for the right time to,
Revealing.
reveal him.
I think we should move on.
Good call. I was just about to say that. All right, so let's see. Who wants to read the next chapter? Because I don't want to be a dictator.
I'll read.
All right, so I'm gonna I'll mute myself, and everyone who's not reading just have good quality.
Okay. Reading from the scriptures 2009. It says, "In that day this song is sung in the land of Yehuda. We have a strong city. He sets up deliverance, walls and ramparts. Open the gates, let the righteous nation which guards the truth enter in. The one steadfast of mind you guard in perfect peace, for he trusts in you. Trust in Yahuwah forever, for in Yahuwah is a rock of ages. For he shall bring down those who dwell on high. He lays the exalted city low. He lays it low to the earth. He brings it down to the dust. A foot tramples it down, feet of the poor, footsteps of the needy. The path of the righteous is uprightness. O upright one, you weigh the course of the righteous. Also in the path of your right rulings. O Yahuwah, we have waited for you. The longing of our being is for your name and for the remembrance of you. My being longs for you in the night. Also my spirit within me seeks you earnestly. For when your right rulings are in the earth, the inhabitants of the world shall learn righteousness. The wrong finds favor, yet he shall not learn righteousness. In the land of straightforwardness he acts perversely and does not see the excellency of Yahuwah. O Yahuwah, your hand is high. They do not see. They see the ardor of the people and are ashamed. Also, let the fire of your adversaries consume them. O Yahuwah, you establish peace for us, for you have also done all our works in us. O Yahuwah, our Elohim, other masters besides you have had rule over us. Only in you do we make mention of your name. The dead do not live, the departed spirits do not rise. Therefore you have visited and destroyed them, and made all their remembrance to perish. You shall increase the nation, O Yahuwah, you shall increase the nation. You are esteemed, you shall expand all the borders of the land. O Yahuwah, in distress they shall visit you. They shall pour out a prayer when your disciplining is upon them. As a woman with child about to give birth rises and cries out in her pain, so shall we be before your face, O Yahuwah. We have conceived, we writhed in pain, we have given birth to wind. We have not accomplished deliverance in the earth, nor have the inhabitants of the world fallen. Let your dead live together with my dead body, let them arise. Awake and sing, you who dwell in dust, For your dew is a dew of light, and let the earth give birth to the departed spirits. Go, my people, enter your rooms and shut your doors behind you. Hide yourself, as it were, for a little while, until the displeasure is past. For look, Yahuwah is coming out of his place to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their crookedness, and the earth shall disclose her blood, and no longer cover her killed ones.
A lot of stuff there.
Mm-hmm.
I notice in verse 14, the word for dead is actually Raphaim, which were giants.
Mm-hmm.
It says the Raphaim do not live. Their departed spirits do not rise. Therefore you have visited and destroyed them and made all their remembrance to perish, because they were not supposed to have existed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that translation because that kind of proves the point that demons are not fallen angels, like we're taught in the church. We're taught that that fallen angels are demons and they're one and the same. When you see devils in the New Testament, like most Christian churches, as far as I know, they teach that fallen angels are demons. And there's a huge difference between an angel and a demon. Demons don't have their own bodies. Angels do. Just because they're a fallen angel doesn't mean that they don't have a body. Satan has a body. He doesn't need to literally go into our body to possess us.
The book of Hanuk puts out what the departed spirits of these Raphaim really are. They're evil spirits that's what we call them, evil spirits or demons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're spirits of dead giants is pretty much what it is. And the reason we know Rephaim actually means giant is because you can actually look up in a concordance and it will tell you that. In a Hebrew concordance, it will say Rephaim is the Hebrew word for the English word giant. So when you see in the Old Testament the valley of Rephaim and how Israel took over that territory, they literally took over the territory that literally means the valley of the giants. So that's how you know that Rephaim means giants. So that
Yeah, and in 26 verse 19, it also makes mention of the departed spirits, the Rephaim. Says, let your dead live together with my dead body. Let them arise, awake and sing, you who dwell in the dust, for your dew is a dew of light. And let the earth give birth to the departed spirits, the Rephaim. So
I think this is a different dead. This is what I'm seeing, that these are the
That your dead live.
Yahuwah is dead.
Yeah.
Those in Yahuwah, let your dead live, and my dead body. Speaking of the writer Isaiah, Yeshayahu, let them arise, awake and sing, you who dwell in dust. For your dew is a dew of light, and let the earth give birth to the departed spirits. So this is looking to the first resurrection, is what this part is. But that first part, verse 14, was a different dead. Those were the Raphaim that let them perish forever. Let their remembrance perish.
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting because Yahusha does hint to the Pharisees that they should know about the resurrection. So that's kind of interesting to me. He's like, because some Pharisees did not believe that they would, they believed there was no resurrection. Like they started believing in fables and the Kabbalah and all that, and that because I know Jews personally from just, living in a Jewish town. A lot of Jews, modern Jews, they believe that once you die, it's it. So even back then, there was like false beliefs in Phariseeism that there's no afterlife. This is it. There's no lake of fire. Like a lot of modern Jews that don't stick to the Bible, that stick to the Talmud, will say, yeah, I don't believe in a lake of fire and all that. So I just find it interesting because Yahusha, kind of rebuked the Pharisees, and he's like, what, you don't know about the resurrection? He's like, because they started, asking him about stuff, or no, they were saying to him, whose wife is she going to be in the resurrection? And he's like, what, are you ignorant of these things? There's no giving into marriage in the resurrection. You'll be like the angels. And so he's telling, the Pharisees basically how it is now, how a man has a wife and, he comes into his wife and they have kids. You ain't going to have that in the resurrection. You ain't going to have that. When we take on incorruption, he was hinting to that we will be physically like the angels. So I just found that interesting. That kind of brought up that verse. That's I think it's from Matthew or something. You're muted, Shoshana.
Dennis and I were discussing something. That's why you saw our mouths moving. But it was about the resurrection and what you just read something that Yahusha said about the people, and we were Dennis was disagreeing with it, and I
think the Catholics may have changed that because the Catholics hate life, they hate the covenant, they hate marriage. And I think when Yahushua was resurrected, he was a whole man, first of the first fruits. And also it says there's no end to the kingdom of Yahuwah. And I think the Catholics have had a hand in changing some stuff there. I really do.
I know they have.
Yeah.
I don't know about that one specifically, but I do know they've changed a lot, and there's a lot of stuff that we're going to have to be shown.
Oh yeah.
That's been taken out.
Yes.
Like they took out the Satanic. Took out a lot of things that had some really good information, like
that they didn't want us to know.
Acts 29.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a major one.
Yeah, I think the reason though with the whole marriage thing why it's like that is because Yahuwah, when he created the angels, he didn't create them to procreate. So I can kind of see what that verse is saying. Yahusha is trying to get them to realize that when you're resurrected, you're not a human being anymore. You're something else. You're a glorified body. And as far as I know, I don't think glorified bodies would, have reproductive organs, so there kind of wouldn't be a point for them to, be physically intimate. So I kind of agree with that verse. Like, it wouldn't make sense to me. The thing with Adam and Eve was, they, it wasn't, as far as I know, it wasn't until after the fall that they started having kids and stuff. So I don't know how it was when they had glorified bodies, when Yahuwah created them literally in his image. I don't know. I mean, from the scriptures that I've read so far, it seems like there's a huge difference between a human being and, the angels. And, if that verse is legit, then Yahusha is trying to let the Pharisees know, listen, like, what you are right now, you're not going to be in the resurrection. And Paul even talks about it. He says corruption must take on incorruption. So it's not too far-fetched that we won't have wives, women won't have husbands and all that. me personally, I don't think that belief is solely of the Catholic Church. That's just my opinion.
I would agree with you, Doug. But I do think that those of us who aren't married, that have the desire to be married, may get that chance in the last 3.5 years, if we're counted worthy to escape to the wilderness. And for us, that last 3.5 years will be enough, and then we'll have our new bodies. So, just a thought.
Yeah, I'm not trying to shoot down people that, I'm not trying to say marriage is bad or anything. I don't want people believing that. I'm just saying that's what I literally see from what Paul talks about and what Yahusha talks about with the resurrection, and that's the only reason I believe what I believe about that is I think that's why even Enoch, Yahuwah literally says you defiled yourself. So obviously Yahuwah did not create them to do that. So that's, you could even use Enoch for that thing with the angels that, I forget what verse it is, but Yahusha does say, angels were not made to procreate. I forget. It's somewhere in John or Matthew, and he, so I don't know. I found it interesting that kind of goes with Enoch too. And when Yahuwah says you have defiled yourself with women. So it's like, I don't know, it's something different. Maybe Yahuwah made humans to be intimate with one another and angels to kind of be more of a, what is it called? Intercessors, as Enoch talks about. Maybe they were made more of like just to be servants. And I don't know, that's just a thought.
The Malachim are created with the ability that Yahuwah has to read minds, to have really more intimacy than husbands and wives, because their intimacy with each other is like thought to thought. And it's hard for us to even imagine it, but we will have that intimacy with Yahuwah when we have our new bodies. It will be more intimate than anything we could ever have with a mate. How I feel.
Yeah, that's some insightful stuff. I never really heard about that at all. Like, I never knew about that. I knew they had special insight, obviously, because they're in heaven, or the heavens, where they're watching Yahuwah create everything. So obviously they have special insight. But I never knew about that. The whole reading minds, I had no idea about that. I know they can definitely transform, as 2 Corinthians says. 2 Corinthians says that don't marvel, because Satan can transform himself into an angel of light. So we know obviously they have special abilities that we can't even fathom, how they can transform into other shapes, objects, appear as humans. Because Paul says, you might entertain an angel unaware, when he's talking about us talking to a human being. So there's a lot of stuff you're like, that's a little weird.
Even the messengers, where seances come from, they can read the minds of these people and look just like their dead relatives, talk just like their dead relatives, because they get it from the minds of the people that they're being deceived by it. And
look at Shaul.
Yeah.
Meet him. The Witch of Endor.
That's part of where I get the fact that they can read minds, and there are other things in the scriptures that allude to that. I don't think it actually says that the Malachim can read your mind, but I think the scripture that Yahusha tells his Talmudim, right now you ask me many things and you want to ask me many things, but in the kingdom you will ask me nothing.
Yeah.
Why? Because they'll already know. They will know what he knows.
That's why it's so important today that we study the word and be as clean as we can. That wicked spirits hate that. And that right there, fill our knowledge up with Yahuwah. Evil spirits won't have anything to do with us.
All right. Well, I'm gonna follow the lead of Kaya, and let's keep it moving. Let's go to the next chapter. I definitely want someone to read that hasn't had a chance. So, all right, I see Brother Sam raise his hand, so go ahead, Sam.
Shalom, everyone. I'll be reading from the scriptures as well. Verse 1. In that day, Yahuwah with his severe sword, great and strong, punishes Leviathan, the fleeing serpent, Leviathan, that twisted serpent. And he shall kill the monster that is in the sea. In that day, sing to her, a vineyard of red wine. I, Yahuwah, do guard it. I water it every moment, lest any hurt it. I guard it night and day. Wrath is not in me. Who would set thorn bushes and weeds against me in battle? I would go through them. I would burn them together. Or let him take hold of my strength and make peace with me. Let him make peace with me. Those who come, he causes to take root in Yaakov. Yisrael shall blossom and bud, and they shall fill the face of the world with fruit. Verse 7. Has he smitten him as he struck the ones who were striking him? Or as a killer, was he killed as he was killing? In measure, by sending her away, you contended with her. He shall take away his rough wind in the day of the east wind. Therefore, by this crookedness of Yaakov is covered, and this is all the fruit of taking away his sin, when he makes all the stones of the slaughter place like chalk stones that are beaten to dust. Asherim and sun pillars rise no more. Verse 10. For the city of defense is lonely, a home forsaken and left like a wilderness. There the calf feeds, and there it lies down, and shall consume its branches. When its twigs are dry, they are broken off. Women come and set them on fire, for it is a people of no understanding. Therefore he who made them has no compassion on them, and he who formed them shows them no favor. And in that day it shall be that Yahuwah threshes from the channel of the river to the wadi of Mitzrayim, and you shall be gathered one by one, O children of Israel. And in that day it shall be that a great shofar is blown, and those who were perishing in the land of Ashur and the outcasts in the land of Mitzrayim shall come, and shall worship Yahuwah on the set-apart mountain in Yerushalayim.
Wow. So first verse I love. That's just, the culmination. The serpent's finally destroyed. And most people that don't know the titles for Satan will just read past that and be like, oh, that's, nice and poetic. And, who's Leviathan? Well, Leviathan is another title for Satan. Leviathan is also mentioned in the book of Job, I believe it's chapter 41, where Yahuwah gives a description of an actual creature he created named Leviathan, and it's like a sea dragon. It's basically like a dragon that lives in the sea, like the Loch Ness monster that people talk about. And so Yahuwah is using this as a metaphor. He's saying that he's going to punish Leviathan and destroy him. And the interesting thing I love about the Septuagint is this same chapter in the Septuagint, Leviathan's not even there. It actually says the dragon. So that I really like because it really gives you the context of who he's talking about in this chapter. And let me just read it real quick. The LXXE, the Brenton Septuagint says, "In that day Yahuwah shall bring his set apart, great and strong sword upon the dragon, even the serpent that flees upon the dragon, the crooked serpent, he shall destroy the dragon." Wow. So I really like how the Septuagint reads that there's no hiding who he's talking about there.
I definitely agree with you. That's definitely, that's talking about Hashatan.
I have some other cross references for Leviathan. Psalm 74, verse 14. Oh, I just had it. Hold on 1 second. Where is it? Hold on 1 second.
No problem. If you're having trouble, just let me know. I can always pause the recording. So just let me know if
Okay, hold on. I had it just now in it.
all right, let me pause the recording just real quick. Can you read that one again, Sister Kaya, the one talking about destroying Leviathan and he'll be food for the people in the wilderness?
Psalm 74, verse 14. It says, "You broke the heads of Leviathan in pieces. You made him food for the people living in the wilderness." And also Psalm 104, verse 26 says, "There do ships go, that Leviathan which you made to play there." Interesting.
Wow. Yeah, I really like the first one because that like speaks volumes of that. Basically, that's like Satan being destroyed, and then Yahuwah is feeding him to us, basically, because he's saying he would be fed to the people in the wilderness. So that's almost like a pre-Revelations verse in Psalm 74. So I really like that one. I'm going to make a note of that one because that's a pretty good correlation. And I see you, Sister Laura. My bad for seeing your raised hand so late. Let me unmute you. Why is it not?
Okay. Done since then. That's all right.
Oh, what happened? You did it by mistake or something?
Now, it was a couple of years ago. I wanted to ask something, but we moved on since then. So let's continue.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. Okay. Okay, so let's see. Was there anything else from that I could figure out here from what we just read? Obviously, we see the prophetically talking about our sins will be covered, and it talks about the Asherah poles, and I guess for the people listening, and it's important to explain what Asherah poles are, especially for anyone listening on this recording. Asherah poles, now they're basically graven images of Ishtar, the wife of Nimrod, and pretty much you can see Asherah poles at churches. They look like a witch hat, basically. It's like the steeples, stuff like that. That's what a modern day Asherah pole is, pretty much.
Christmas trees.
Yep, Christmas trees. They're phallic symbols. Asherah poles. They're pretty much one and the same. But the witch hats are like the big obvious one. Like whenever you see a church that has like that triangle thing on the top, that's
And also obelisks.
yeah, obelisks. So yeah, so when Yahuwah says in verse, what is it, 9, he says they will turn it into dust. And actually, that's part of the Torah. We're supposed to be doing that when we're in our own land. So it's possible, if this is all end times, chapter 27, and this is the day that Yahuwah destroys Satan and his minions, that most likely we're going to be destroying idols. So that's pretty cool. So, and what's interesting too is verse 10 says, for the city of defense is lonely and home forsaken left like a wilderness. There's a metaphor comparing the city to a wilderness. I guess it's talking about Babylon. And let's see, dry. I'm just trying to see real quick if there's any other connections here. Starts talking about the river, the Wadi River going, the channel of the river to the Wadi of Egypt. Okay, verse 12, yeah.
Isaiah 64, verse 10. Your set apart cities have become a wilderness. Zion has become a wilderness. Jerusalem, a waste. That's what I got.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's interesting cross-reference. What really jumped out to me in verse 12, though, was it says, and you shall be gathered one by one, O children of Yashrael. So that's interesting. That's talking about the regathering. It's talking about us being, a nation created in one day. I can't say it how many times that's falsely misinterpreted in Christianity and Judaism. That they say, oh yeah, Israel was born in one day, 1947. Yeah, no, that's not prophecy fulfilled. No, that's Satan's counterfeit. As far as I'm concerned, that's his counterfeit. That's to quote Rob Skiba, Yahuwah himself with his hand is going to do it, not using Zionists to fulfill his will. Because Yahuwah even says, I think it's in Jeremiah, he's like, I myself will gather them. So Yahuwah doesn't need no Luciferians to gather his people.
It even says, sends out to make sure he gets everyone and brings them back into their own land. I remember that from a song I wrote. And then he sent out hunters to gather Israel back into their own land.
Yeah, I forget what verse it was where it there was one verse I came across a while ago that talks about that Judah and Israel are going to come into the land together. It's not going to be Judah first, then Israel. So I loved seeing that verse because that totally debunks that because that's one of the explanations the church gives you is, oh well, the Jews had to come first, so now the house of Israel will lead them in the end times. But I remember seeing a verse that literally said, I will gather the house of Judah, the house of Israel together, and they will come into the land. So
yeah.
I got an interesting cross-reference to Isaiah 27, verse 10, Luke 21, 20 through 24. It says, and when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know that its laying waste is near. Then let those in Yehuda flee to the mountains, and let those who are in the midst of her go out, and let not those who are in the fields enter her, because these are days of vengeance, to fill all that have been written. And woe to those who are pregnant, and to those who are nursing children in those days, for there shall be great distress in the earth, and wrath upon this people, and they shall fall by the edge of the sword and be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trampled underfoot by the nations until the times of the nations are filled.
And that's
We
interesting.
That was interesting.
We do not want to be in Israel right now. Because that
No.
time is.
And my theory is when it talks about the Jerusalem being trampled by the Gentiles, I think about who's in there right now, and the fact that, you know, either way, those right now that are in there are not Israel, you know, whether by blood or by spiritually. So it's possibly they could be fulfilling that, being trampled by the Gentiles until the multitude comes in, until the what Paul talks about, the fullness of the Gentiles. So while Yahuwah is reaching out to us, getting us grafted in, you have those in Jerusalem basically trampling, you know, Jerusalem underfoot, you know. And that's, so I kind of see it more of as the people that are in there right now could be fulfilling prophecy in that way. You know, not to try to, you know, stab at anyone, but if what we have of Israel right now is fulfilling prophecy, that makes a lot more sense. They're fulfilling that part of prophecy, because they're most of them, 80% of, you know, them in Israel will admit themselves they're not believers. So spiritually they're definitely not Israel. So, and they're pretty much, you know, I don't know what trampling underfoot means, whether that means they're, you know, they hijack Jerusalem, or I don't know what it exactly means by, you know, by the Gentiles will trample it underfoot. So
Maybe I can do that because the Catholic Church owns Mount Zion. And when that temple is built, it will not be built for Yahuwah. The Jews will believe they're building it for Yehovah, which is what they call Yahuwah. But in the end, it'll be built for Anti-Messiah and the Pope, his false prophet. And they will run Jerusalem. In fact, they will run the world for 3.5 years until their destruction comes.
I got some cross references for trampled underfoot for that verse, Luke 21 verse 24. It also cross references Genesis 48:19. It says, but his father refused and said, I know, my son, I know. He also becomes a people, and he also is great, and yet his younger brother is greater than he, and his seed is to become the completeness of the nations. Psalm 79 verse 1, O Yahuwah, the nations have come into your inheritance. They have defiled your set-apart Hekal. They turned Jerusalem into ruins. Romans 11 verse 25, for I do not wish you to be ignorant of this secret, brothers, lest you should be wise in your own estimation, that hardening in part has come over Yashrael until the completeness of the nations has come in. Referring back to Genesis 48, verse 19.
and that could be, I can take that two different ways, to be honest. You know, the people in Israel right now are hardened. You know, a good bit of them don't want to believe that Yahushua was the Messiah. And then I can go as far to say on the flip side, it could be actual real Judeans, real Yahudim, that that, you know, have fallen away, fallen from the faith, and are only Old Testament only Hebrews. So I kind of see it both ways, that could be like a dual prophecy, talking about people that are claimed to be Yahudim in the land, and also real natural-born Yahudim that are also hardened. So it's kind of like both. I don't know. That's how I see it.
I see that they are like that right now, and I certainly hope that they will, at least many of them will come to Mashiach. People, I have heard that there is a movement in that direction in Israel, and I hope it's not just a small movement, but a growing movement, because there really needs to be. And I don't know what Susie wants to do with her play, because I had asked her if she would send me the script so I could write the music. She said no. So I don't know if she's changed her mind or what about that, but I think that it could be a very good way of reaching the Yahudim.
Yeah. Yeah. I do believe there's going to be a good bit of them that will be saved when Yahusha comes back, because there's a verse in Zechariah. I forget if it's Zechariah 12 or 14. Yahusha, I feel like it's prophetically Yahusha speaking when he says, "They will see me whom they have pierced, and they will mourn for me like a mother mourns for her only child, her only son." So I kind of see it as there will be a time when he's coming back, and some of them will be unhardened. Some of them, their hearts will be softened. Some of them. I don't know if it's going to be like a lot, but I do believe there will be some that will believe that Yahusha is the Messiah. They'll see him coming in the clouds, and they'll be like, "Whoa, all right, we were wrong."
I also think the two witnesses help that along greatly. The work of the two witnesses is going to be very strong. And I believe a lot of Yahudim will see that they are truly of Yahuwah and will turn.
Another thing that's interesting too is Yahusha says to his own brethren, "You will not see me again until you say, 'Blessed is he that comes in the name of Yahuwah.'" So I found that interesting too, and I've heard guys speak on it, and I kind of do agree. He was kind of more referring to like the natural-born Israelites, and that, you know, you won't ever see me again until you say that phrase. So there's definitely hinting towards that. A good, I would say maybe, you know, a decent bit of them will start believing. There's going to be something happening, and I think his return alone is going to get a lot of people believing in him. And it's possible when he returns is when they're getting attacked. Because in Ezekiel, I think it's Ezekiel 38 or 39, he starts off the chapter, Yahuwah himself, saying that, you know, I'm sending these nations to attack Israel, but then I'm going to be coming to their defense, basically. So he, you know, they're seeing all this turmoil, but then they see Yahusha coming in the clouds. They're like, whoa. They're like, all right, he is the Messiah, right? And yeah, but I also think it's going to be almost like split. I see more of like a 50-50 or 60-40 realistically, because so many people in Jerusalem right now they're already set for what they want in a Messiah. And I think that's the problem, is that they pictured Yahusha to be this conqueror, this man to bring peace, pretty much this, guy that Daniel talks about as the anti-Messiah, and pretty much John talks about as the anti-Messiah. I mean, Daniel outright says this guy's going to be a conqueror. This guy is going to know, wicked speech. He's going to know how to speak dark sentences and all this stuff. So pretty much what the Jews in Judaism, like people that are in Judaism, what they want in a Messiah is the anti-Messiah, and that's the problem. And they don't see the deception. They don't see that what they actually want in their Mashiach is the beast.
I see that right now for sure. Unfortunately, but I hope that many of them will repent, especially the fact that he is going to be blaspheming the name greatly. It says in Revelation that he blasphemes the name.
Mm-hmm. Second Thessalonians says that he claims to be Yahuwah. He claims to be the Almighty when he walks into that third temple. So this is going to be like the culmination of the abomination of desolation, because throughout history we've had many people claim that they're a god, and they claim that they want the worship, like Nebuchadnezzar did it. He did like an abomination of desolation type of thing. Antiochus Epiphanes, he claimed to be a god. Caesar claimed to be a god. But what's going to separate him, the end times Nimrod, from all of them is that he's going to claim to be the Father. He's going to be like, as it says, he sits in the seat of Elohim, the throne of Elohim, claiming to be Elohim. No other man has done that. No other man had the gall to say, I'm Yahuwah, I'm Elohim. And that's going to be the huge test. I don't think it's just Jews, to be honest, that some Jews are going to be deceived. I believe there's going to be many different religions that will be deceived in that. Christianity is going to be deceived in that. Islam is going to be deceived in that, because Islam is actually, if you compare religions, Islam is pretty close to Judaism. A lot of what they believe is very similar, very extremely similar.
They have ties. I found the scripture in Revelation 13, and they worship the beast. This is verse 4. They worship the dragon who gave authority to the beast, and they worship the beast, saying, who is like the beast, who is able to fight with him? And he was given a mouth speaking greatness and blasphemies, and he was given authority to do so for 42 months. And he opened his mouth in blasphemies against Yahuwah, to blaspheme his name and his tent and those dwelling in the Shemayim. And it was given to him to fight with the Kadoshim and to overcome them. The authority was given to him over every tribe and tongue and nation, and all those dwelling on the earth, whose names have not been written in the book of Hai, of the slain Lamb, from the foundation of the world, shall worship him. If anyone has an ear, let him hear.
Now that's an interesting verse. Those that have not had their name written from the foundation of the world. So wait a minute. These are some special, I don't know if they're human people, because my theory is if you haven't had your name written from the foundation of the world, meaning it was never in it to begin with, there's something special about these whatever people they are, because my theory is
maybe they weren't meant to.
The giants?
Nephilim, maybe they are Nephilim.
Yeah, because the giants were never written in the book of life, and Moses even references the book of life in Exodus. even says, blot my name out of your book. But then Yahuwah says, no, the man who sins against me, I will blot. So Yahuwah actually denied Moses that he would blot his name for other people, because Moses was pretty much trying to, he was trying to intercess, be our, kind of like foreshadowing Yahusha, and trying to, put the sins of the people on himself. So, but yeah, and that's actually telling us too that the book of life was from the foundation of the world. So from Genesis, he had this book of life. And so, if it's a human being, then you have to be at least in that book at a certain point. I believe all of our names were originally written in that book, but when we reject Yahusha, it gets erased. Because there's also a verse that says their names have been blotted. Those who add to the prophecy of this book, those who remove from the prophecy of this book, their names will be blotted out of the book of life. So I believe in this verse's context, some type of creatures, hybrids or something that never had their name to begin with. I kind of agree with Skiba on that, because I've heard him talk about that verse before, and it makes sense because it says it never was. Their names never were. So
I do. And the people who take the mark of the beast will be blotted out.
Become things.
Because they would have, if Anthony Patch is correct, they will have modified their DNA, perhaps, as Rob Skiba says, taken some of the blood of Nimrod and gotten the third helix in their DNA to where they are no longer redeemable.
And what's interesting too is that kind of reflects the days of Noah. If you read, I think it's Genesis 7, where it talks about, that I won't live with man any longer. Like right after it says all flesh had been corrupted, then he says, no longer will I be with man. So it's like Yahuwah won't cohabitate with us if we corrupt ourselves. He's actually saying during Noah's time. So,
Yeah. It's Genesis 6, right after he talks about the Nephilim, then he says he will not dwell with men. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of Elohim came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, the men of name. And Yahuwah saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And Yahuwah was sorry that he had made man on the earth, and was grieved in his heart. And Yahuwah said, I am going to wipe off men whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, creeping creature and birds of the Shemayim, for I am sorry I have made them. And the verse we were looking for is verse 3, and Yahuwah said, my Ruach shall not strive with mankind forever in his going astray. He is flesh, and his days shall be 120 years.
Yeah, and right there is the evidence that disobedience can have a genetic defect. Because right there, if you read from Genesis 1 to 6, their lifespan was starting at 900 to 1,000 years old, going all the way down to 120 years old. I mean, literally, Yahuwah took away 800 or 900 years of their life because of sin. So there's definitely a defect genetically and physically when we sin. And I think that's why Yahuwah says there's life in the blood. And I started thinking about that. I was watching a video today by the Seventh-day Adventist guy on YouTube. He's really popular, Walter Vaith. And he was starting to talk about, the origins of, what happened to Cain after the garden. And, it was a big thing into Freemasonry. But the gist of it was that he read that verse talking about Yahuwah saying, your brother's blood is crying out to me. And I started thinking about that literally. I'm like, what if that's literal? What if like there's actual, like, blood is alive? Like, it actually cried out to Yahuwah. So I started thinking, wow. So, and I wonder if our blood alone, like if someone to take a sample of our blood, if they could see our past injuries, like certain stuff like that you can just see from someone's blood, like their whole life.
I know that Yahweh can, for sure. He can also see where we've repented and all the righteous deeds that we've done. And I believe also that there's the things that come down from family lines, the curses.
Yeah.
You can, through righteous living, overcome them.
Break the curses.
Break the curses, yes. My father and my brother, our father, are both dead from diabetes, which I have, and I still live. And I can only attribute that to Yahweh, because my numbers are great, and I'm not starving myself or anything. I'm just living right, and being sustained, exactly. And Rob Skiba brought out the part where if a person is given a right chromosome and a wrong chromosome, like if it's a female, for instance, and they have a good X and a bad X, one from the Nephilim line, and they live a righteous line, they can overcome that bad X and transmit only good genes to their posterity. So that is perfect.
Yeah, and most likely there was in the days of Noah and after the flood, I have reason to believe there was, I think it's in the book of Jasher Jubilees, it talks about that Cain or Ham had this book that was used to genetically manipulate, like there was secret knowledge from the Watchers how to change their DNA to become a giant. And it says in the Septuagint, Nimrod began to be a giant. So I believe he had that knowledge. He probably had that secret book that Ham, his dad had, or his grandfather Ham had.
It was actually one of the sons of Seth that found the book. And his name is not mentioned after that. It says that he found the book with the knowledge of the Watchers in it, and it doesn't say anything else about him, but then later on it talks about Nimrod becoming a Gibborim. So we can only assume that somehow Nimrod acquired that book.
Yeah, I think it's more than inference, especially if you look at the Hebrew word for began in the Septuagint. I've heard from many other people in our faith that supposedly the Hebrew word for began in that verse refers to become defiled, to defile oneself. So if you take that context of what the verse is saying, it said he basically defiled himself to become a giant. So whatever he did, whether he did some rituals, whatever, or DNA splicing, supposedly, you can turn a chromosome on and off to become a giant. So that it's very possible he could have done that. And that could explain the giants after the flood.
Yeah. Even brings out that it might have been a sexual defilement of some sort. A ritual, perhaps.
What's interesting too is his wife / mother is always depicted as a hybrid. It's very weird. I never like really thought about it before, but every time I saw like ancient archaeology and what 119's ministries did on Sunburned, and many people find like the depictions of Semiramis, she's got like angel wings. Like, it's kind of weird. I wondered if maybe she was like a child of a union like that, and maybe that's how he defiled himself by coming into her, and or doing something with her DNA mixing with his DNA to become a giant. I don't know. It just seems like archaeology hints that she might be not 100% human.
Yeah, good point. Because Nimrod is 2/3 Nephilim, or 2/3 God, G-O-D, little g.
1/3.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting too, and how supposedly he's 2/3 of one and 1/3 of the other, and the whole 666 thing, because Yahusha is 100% Elohim, 100% man, and Nimrod's like 30% everything. So that's like 333, and you multiply 3 by 2, you get 6. So it's kind of interesting, and just the coordinates of where the Watchers went on Mount Hermon, the nautical miles and everything, it adds up to 666. It's like 33% one way, 33% the other way. So it's like interesting how the exact coordinates of where they landed on Mount Hermon would be 666.
Yes, and Skiba brought that out too. He's done a lot of research into that.
And I always brought up to people too how interesting is that not even their children, but the descendants of their children were still in Mount Hermon when the Israelites were going into Canaan. There was still Nephilim at Mount Hermon at that point. So it seems like that's where all of them were basically roaming for like thousands of years.
They ended up Patagonia. Are we going to continue? Because we either need to move along or.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry about the rabbit trails, everyone. But so we're starting. Is it chapter 28? Yeah. Okay. So let's see here. I read. Kaya read. Sam. Shoshana, you or Laura, whoever wants to go next.
I'll take it.
Okay.
Woe to the proud crown of the drunkards of Ephraim, and to the fading flower of its splendid comeliness that is on the head of the fertile valley, to those who are overcome with wine. See, Yahweh has one who is mighty and strong, like a downpour of hail and a destroying storm, like a flood of mighty waters overflowing, who casts down to the earth with the hand. The proud crown of the drunkards of Ephraim is trampled underfoot, and the fading flower of its splendid comeliness that is on the head of the fertile valley, like the first fruit before the summer, which when one sees it, he eats it up while it is still in his hand. In that day, Yahweh of hosts is for a crown of splendor and a headdress of comeliness to the remnant of his people, and a spirit of right ruling to him who sits in right ruling, and strength to those who turn back the battle at the gate. And those too have gone astray through wine and through strong drink, wandered about. Cohen and Nabi have gone astray through strong drink. They are swallowed up by wine. They wander about through strong drink. They go astray in vision. They stumble in right ruling. For all tables shall be covered with vomit, no place without filth. Whom would he teach knowledge? And whom would he make to understand the message? Those weaned from milk, those taken from the breast. For it is command upon command, command upon command, line upon line, line upon line, here a little, there a little. For with a jabbering lip and a foreign tongue he speaks to this people, to whom he said, this is the rest. Give rest to the weary, and this is the refreshing. But they would not hear. And the word of Yahweh was to them, command upon command, command upon command, line upon line, line upon line, here a little, there a little, so that they go and be broken and sated. Therefore, hear the word of Yahweh, you men of scorn, who rule this people who are in Yerushalayim, because you have said, we have made a covenant with death, and with the grave we have effected a vision. When the overflowing scourge passes through, it does not come to us. For we have made lying our refuge, and under falsehood we have hidden ourselves. Therefore, thus said the Adon Yahuwah, see, I am laying in Zion a stone for a foundation, a tried stone, a precious cornerstone, a settled foundation. He who trusts shall not hasten away, and I shall make right ruling the measuring line, and righteousness the plummet. And the hail shall sweep away the refuge of lying, and the waters overflow the hiding place. And your covenant with death shall be annulled, and your vision with the grave not stand. When an overflowing scourge passes through, then you shall be trampled down by it. As often as it passes through, it shall take you, for it shall pass through every morning, and by day and by night, and it shall be only trembling to understand the message. For the bed shall be too short for a man to stretch out on, and the covering shall be too narrow to wrap himself in it. For Yahweh rises up as at Mount Perazim, and he is wroth as at the valley of Gibeon, to do his work, his strange work, and to do his deed, his strange deed. And now do not be scoffers, lest your bonds be made strong. For I have heard from the Adon Yahuwah of hosts a destruction decreed upon all the earth. Give ear and hear my voice. Listen and hear my word. Does the plowman keep plowing all day to sow? Does he keep turning his soil and breaking the clods? When he has leveled its surface, does he not sow the caraway and scatter the cumin? Plant the wheat in rows, the barley in the appointed place, and the spelt in its place. For he instructs him for right ruling. His Elohim teaches him. For caraway is not threshed with a threshing sledge, nor is a wagon wheel rolled over cumin. But caraway is beaten out with a stick, and cumin with a rod. Grain is crushed, so one does not go on threshing it forever, nor break it with his wagon wheel, nor crush it with his horsemen. Even this has come from Yahuwah of hosts, who did wonders in counsel, who made wisdom great. And I was reading from the Hallelujah Scriptures. I think one thing big is the fact that verse 16 is a prophecy for Mashiach. He talks about a stone for a foundation, a tried stone, a precious cornerstone, a settled foundation.
And something that's interesting about the cornerstone too, which I find it very slick, the NIV puts capstone. And unfortunately, many people that are reading from the NIV, they don't see the big problem with that. And I think it's very strategic by whoever creates these NIV Bibles now, because now people are going to look at their dollar bill and they're going to see that capstone and they think that's referring to the Messiah. So I think it was very strategic. It was very on purpose that every time every time it says cornerstone in the other Bibles, the NIV replaced it with capstone. So that kind of reminded me of that, and I agree with Sister Shoshana. That's talking about Yahusha when it says, "I will give them a cornerstone, and those who trust in him will not be put to shame." So yeah, I mean. And another thing, too, I found interesting, too, is the covenant with the dead kind of brought to life the whole celebration of Halloween. And, people that celebrate technically are doing what Ephraim is doing back then. And let's see here.
I have some cross references for the cornerstone. Psalms 118, verse 22. The stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. And also Matthew 21, verse 42. Yahusha said to them, "Did you never read in the scriptures, the stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone? This was from Yahuwah, and it is marvelous in our eyes." Those are two. And Mark 12, verse 10. Have you not read this scripture? The stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. Luke 20, 17 through 18 also says the same thing. The stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. Everyone who falls on that stone shall be broken, but on whomever it falls, he shall be pulverized.
Mm. Wow.
And there's some other cross references. Acts 4:11 through 12 also talks about the stone that the builders rejected. This is the stone which was rejected by you builders, which has become the chief cornerstone. And there is no deliverance in anyone else, for there is no other name under the heaven given among men by which we need to be saved. Romans 9:33, and it has been written, see, I lay in Zion a stone of stumbling and a rock that makes for falling, and everyone who is believing on him shall not be put to shame. Isaiah 8 verse 14 and Isaiah 28 verse 16, which is what we were just reading. I think that's pretty much it on the cornerstone.
I actually have one
Oh,
more. Psalms 118, verse 23. And I believe Paul actually quotes from this when he talks about it in the book of Acts. Psalms 118, 20. So let's start at.
I just read 22.
Oh, okay. My bad. So 23, the verse after 22, which says, the stone which the builders rejected, the same is become the head of the corner or cornerstone. This has been done of Yahuwah, and it's wonderful in our eyes. So that tells you that Yahuwah himself did this, and he caused them to stumble. He caused them to reject the cornerstone, which is interesting. So, yeah. And all the ones you brought up, Kai, are actually cross-referenced here, which is interesting. Did you cross-reference Matthew 16:18? Because I actually have one here that says Matthew 16:18. That's interesting.
My computer just went haywire on me again. Or maybe it's just me. Hold on. Let me find it.
This is an interesting cross-reference for the My Sword to Give. Matthew 16:18 says, I also tell you that, so let me go to a decent translation for that verse. And I also say unto you that you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my assembly, and the gates of Sheol shall not prevail against it. So that's interesting. So, and this verse popularly is interpreted that Peter's the rock. But really, Yahushua is actually saying, he's looking at Peter saying, you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my assembly. So most likely he's either physically talking about a rock, or he's talking about himself. So most likely he is talking about himself, because he uses parables when he speaks to his disciples, when he says if they were built their house upon the rock, it would not go away when the storm comes. So obviously he's always referring to himself as the rock. And so
I got another cross reference. 1 Peter 2 verse 6, because it is contained in the scripture, see, I lay in Zion a chief cornerstone, chosen, precious, and he who believes on him shall by no means be put to shame. That's 1 Peter 2 verse 6.
Okay.
I think that's all I got.
Yeah. I just find it interesting that they used that Matthew 16 as a cross reference. That's really interesting. And then they also give me another cross reference for the rock, Ephesians chapter 2, verse 20, and are built upon the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Yahusha the Messiah himself being the chief cornerstone. So there you go. There's the there's
Oh yeah, Ephesians verse 20.
yeah. And my sword gave me that as a cross reference for the Matthew 16 one. So that cross reference actually explains that Yahusha must be the rock, because it's talking about he's the foundation of the apostles and prophets, himself being the chief cornerstone. So rock, stone, same terminology. Okay, got it. All right. So let's see here. Dennis, would you like to read?
King. I was looking at the last few verses here about how it explains about when he has leveled the surface, does he not sow the caraway and scatter the cumin plant and wheat and rose? And I think this is talking about the common sense that Yahweh gives us, that is ruach that he gives us, and I think we've lost a lot of that today.
Well, most people have. Those of us who've been called
are getting it.
are being taught by the Ruach.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep. And that also brought me to I remember us talking about the being babies in the faith, and this chapter actually speaks upon that a little bit, and how Yahuwah is actually talking down upon Ephraim because it's like they're children needing the milk again. And he's kind of saying, I have to give them here a little, there a little. I have to, give them my instruction very slowly because they're like babies. And it almost seems like he's saying it in a derogatory way, because he's kind of saying like, where it starts? Okay, here it says in verse 8, for all the tables shall be covered with vomit, no place without filth. Whom would he teach knowledge, and whom would he make to understand the message? Those weaned from milk, those taken from the breasts. For it is command upon command, command upon command, line upon line, line upon line, here a little, there a little. So he's talking in the context about precept upon precept, but he's saying it in a way that it's not good. He's saying that, and then he goes on to say that basically they took his word, his instructions as just verbatim commands, and they didn't understand, his word. They just looked at it at what is it called, like verbatim physical level of just being commands, direct commands and outward commands and nothing else. So I found that pretty interesting.
I got a cross-reference with Jeremiah 23, 36 through 38. The message of Yahuwah you no longer remember, for every man's message is his own word. For you have changed the words of the living Elohim, Yahuwah of hosts, our Elohim. That is what you say to the prophet. What has Yahuwah answered you, and what has Yahuwah spoken? But since you say the message of Yahuwah, therefore, thus said Yahuwah, because you say this word, the message of Yahuwah, I have sent to you, saying, do not say the message of Yahuwah. That was my cross-reference for Isaiah 28, verse 13. And Hosea 8, verse 12 says, I have written for him numerous matters of my Torah. They were regarded as strange. So,
yeah, when it starts going into in this chapter talking about, I try to show them I tried to give them rest, and they refused it. Let's see, because let me see where it exactly says that. See, I will give them rest for gathering led foreign tongue. Here, verse 12. To whom he said, "This is the rest. Give rest to the weary. This is refreshing," but they would not hear. It's kind of like in Jeremiah chapter 17, or I think it's 17 or 16, where he says, "Seek for the ancient paths to find the way, the way that you should be led."
Jeremiah 6.
Jeremiah what?
Jeremiah 6, verse 16.
Okay.
Thus said Yahuwah, stand in the ways and see, and ask for the old paths, where the good way is, and walk in it, and find rest for yourselves. But they said, we do not walk in it.
So,
Jeremiah 6, verse 16. Was that it?
yep, that's the exact verse I was thinking of. And that is a good cross-reference to the context of what he's talking about in verse 12 of this chapter. That pretty much they're willfully ignorant of his ways, his commandments, and they took his commandments as just pretty much something that's taught by a man, technically. It talks about they looked at his they looked at his word as just, commandments. And let me see where it says, but the word of Yahuwah was to them command upon command, line upon line, here a little, there a little. So it's kind of like they just looked at his word like there's nothing spiritual to it. It's just, it's just a vain, basically they looked at it like it's just an outward expression of obedience. It's just laws. And, so I don't know, that's kind of what I got from verse 13. And it says because of that they started to stumble. So they there was no faith involved. It was just kind of like what we would know as works salvation. They kind of just looked at his word like, okay, this is what I got to do. All right, okay, I got to do these outward commandments, and that's it. And there was probably no faith involved because he talks about rest. He's going to give them rest, but they did not accept his rest. Kind of what Paul talks about in the book of Hebrews, that because they did not enter into his rest because of disobedience and no faith. So they pretty much just looked at his word like they were outward commandments, and they despised it pretty much. They rejected his law. They didn't enter into his rest, and so I don't know. That's what I got from that verse.
Doug, it's after 11 o'clock. Do you want to continue?
Let's see. We've only read about 3 chapters. I think yeah, I think we can continue as long as everyone wants to continue. I don't want to force anyone.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, Dennis is
Yep, they were ready. Woe to Ariel, and year to year let festivals come around, and I shall distress Ariel, and there shall be mourning and sorrow, and it shall be to me as Ariel. And I shall encamp against you all around. I shall lay siege against you with the mound, and I shall raise siege works against you. And you shall be brought low and speak out of the ground, and your speech shall be low out of the dust, and your voice shall be like a medium's out of the ground, and your speech whisper out of the dust. But the crowd of those strange to you shall be like fine dust, and the crowd of the ruthless ones as chaff blowing away, and it shall be in an instant, suddenly. You shall be visited by Yahuwah of hosts, and thunder and earthquake and great noise, and with whirlwind and storm, and flame of devouring fire. Then the crowd of all the Gentiles who fight against Ariel, even all who fight against her and her stronghold, and distress her, shall be as a dream of a night vision. And it shall be as when a hungry man dreams, and see, he eats, but he awakes, and his being is empty. Or as when a thirsty man dreams, and see, he drinks, but he awakes, and see, he is faint, and his being is longing. Thus shall be the crowd of all the Gentiles who fought against Mount Zion. Pause and wonder. Blind yourselves and be blind. They are drunk, but not with wine. They stagger, but not with strong drink. For Yahuwah has poured out on you the spirit of deep sleep, and has closed your eyes, the Nebium, and he has covered your heads and the seers. And the entire vision is to you like the words of a book that is sealed, which men give to one who knows books, saying, read this, please. And he said, I am unable, for it is sealed. And the book is given to one who does not know books, saying, read this, please. And he said, I have not known books. And Yahuwah says, because this people has drawn near with its mouth and with its lips, they have esteemed me, and it has kept its heart far from me, and their reverence of me has become a command of men that is taught. Therefore, see, I am again doing a marvelous work among this people, a marvelous work and a wonder, and the wisdom of their wise men shall perish, and the understanding of their clever men shall be hidden. Woe to those who seek deep to hide their counsel far from Yahuwah, and their works are in the dark. They say, who sees us and who knows us? How perverse of you! Should the potter be reckoned as the clay? Should what is made say of its maker, he did not make me? And what is formed say of him who formed it, he did not understand? Is it not yet a little while, and Lebanon shall be turned into garden land, and garden land be reckoned as a forest? And in that day the deaf shall hear the words of the book, and the eyes of the blind shall see out of gloom and out of darkness. And the meek ones shall increase their joy in Yahuwah, and the poor among men rejoice in the Kadesh one of Yisrael. For the ruthless one is brought to nothing, the scorner is consumed, and all who watch for evil shall be cut off. Those who make a man to sin in word, and lay a snare for him who reproves in the gate, and turn aside the righteous with emptiness. Therefore, thus says Yahuwah, who ransomed Abraham concerning the house of Jacob. Jacob is no longer but put to shame. No longer does his face grow pale. For when he sees his children, the work of my hands, in his midst, they shall Kadesh my name, and Kadesh the Kadesh one of Jacob, and revere the Elohim of Yisrael. And those who went astray in spirit shall come to understanding, and the grumblers accept instruction. Finally. Yeah.
And I love verse 13 because I always use that when people come against me and kind of, some people on our faith mock me for using the Septuagint, but I'd be like, test verse 13 in this translation against the Septuagint and tell me which one Yahusha quoted from. And that will shock people. Because he verbatim in the Septuagint says, because these people have drawn near me with their lips, with their mouth, and their lips have let me read it real quick and show the difference, and that there's proof that Yahusha used the Septuagint in his day, because I'll use the same verse that we just read, verse 13, and read it from the Septuagint. Tell me which one did Yahusha say. And Yahuwah has said, these people draw near to me with their mouth and honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. But in vain do they worship me, teaching the commandments and doctrines of men. Now, this is the Septuagint, and this is what Yahusha verbatim says to the Pharisees. And that's what really attracted me to the Septuagint. I was like, wow, so Yahusha and his disciples were using the Septuagint. So I just find that interesting, how different that is compared to what we just read in the Masoretic text, where it kind of differently says that their fear of me has become a commandment taught by men. So it's like a little different. It's like a tiny bit different with the Septuagint. It's more of the fact that they're teaching traditions of man as Yahuwah's commands. And in Mark 7:7, from the King James reads pretty much verbatim. I think it's Mark 7:7, or maybe it's definitely Mark 7:7. Let me see here. Mark chapter 7, verse 7. Howbeit in vain do they worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. So it's like identical. And I always found that interesting. And that's what started my journey to the Septuagint. I was like, wow. So I don't know, that was something I wanted to bring up.
I was going to say it's Mark 6 and 7.
Yeah, it's Mark chapter 7, verses 6 to 7.
6 and 7, yeah.
Yeah. He answered and said to them, well, has Isaiah prophesied of you hypocrites? So he's telling the Pharisees that Isaiah prophesied about you guys. So it's kind of like a stab at the Pharisees. He's saying, yeah, Isaiah talked about you guys before you were born. These people honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. And it also quotes Matthew 15:8 and verse 9 of Matthew 15. So that's pretty interesting to me. It's so interesting, the manuscripts, I wonder how the Masoretic text got translated. The fear of me has become a commandment of men. I just wonder how they got that, because it's definitely a little different. Because one is talking about that traditions of men, they're teaching traditions of men as Yahuwah's commands, which Yahusha says. And then the other one is talking about the fear of Yahuwah has become a commandment of men. So basically the Masoretic text is saying that the fear for Yahuwah is something taught by man, and it's become something that's just a fleshly commandment.
That was Matthew 15:8 to 9, right?
Yep. Yeah. So that's usually my defense when people attack me and say the Septuagint's not legit. I'll be like, okay, hey, if Yahusha quoted from it, I think we need to take a second look at it.
That's 15 verse 9. But in vain do they worship me, teachings the commands of men. It cross-references Isaiah 29 verse 13, which we just read. And Mark 7 verse 7 says, and in vain do they worship me, teachings the commands of men. And 2 Kings 17 verse 19, Yehuda also did not guard the commands of Yahuwah their Elohim.
but walked in the laws of Yashrael which they made. Man-made laws.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I didn't even know about that one.
Okay, Dennis.
I've got a little reference here too. For Yoda has poured out on you the spirit of deep sleep, and has closed your eyes, the Nevium, and he has covered your heads, the seers.
That's verse 10.
Verse 10, yeah. And I was thinking that the Aspen Institute does this. Rockefeller-owned institute. They constantly cast spells and charms on the American people to keep them asleep.
Probably not just Americans,
Oh,
but
they do it all over the
all
world.
over the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have big groups like this.
Witches and warlocks and all this ilk that constantly cast spells on the people.
And
keep
it's
them
like
asleep.
putting them asleep.
Yeah.
Where they don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, another thing, verse 7 really reminded me, this verse 7 chapter 29 kind of reminded me of 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, because it says that, it's saying that Yahuwah is going to visit them with a great whirlwind and storm and a flame of devouring fire. And it reminded me because 2 Thessalonians says the sun will consume. Let's see, what verse is this? Let's see, when he himself shall consume. Here we go. It's 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 8. And it says, and then shall that wicked one be revealed, talking about the anti-Messiah, whom Yahusha shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. So that kind of reminded me of 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 8, that, this devouring fire, this flame of fire. So consuming the wicked and, so I kind of got a correlation between the Father and the Son there.
Also, the two witnesses are going to consume, well, the two witnesses are going to consume people as well. I mean, prior to Yahushua or Yahusha coming back. I mean,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I think it says, I forget how it goes in Revelations. It talks about that they were given power to, Yahuwah resurrected them and gave them power to, whoever's trying to cause them harm, they would breathe out fire and consume people that are trying to kill them. Because originally they get killed by the beast. The beast slays them. He has power to slay them. And then Yahuwah resurrects them. So
And here's this verse. It's Revelation 11, starting in verse 3. And I shall give unto my two witnesses, and they shall nabah 2,260 days clad in sackcloth. These are the two olive trees and two lampstands that are standing before the Elohim of the earth. And if anyone wants to harm them, fire comes out from their mouth and consumes their enemies. And if anyone wants to harm them, he has to be killed in that way. These possess authority to shut the Shemayim so that no rain falls in the days of their Nabuah. And they possess authority over waters to turn them to blood and to smite the earth with all plagues as often as they want.
So there.
Okay, Doug, where are you?
I'm right here. I think I'm gonna stop the recording actually and just take a break. So we're gonna stop the recording real quick.